In a small, forgotten village nestled between thick, dense woods and an eerie, silent lake, lived a folklorist named Morgan. For years, she had spent her life documenting the haunting tales of olden days. The villagers knew her well and often invited her to hear their grandmother's whispers about the shadows that lurked in the forest or the spectral lights that danced on the lake's surface. One tale particularly captivated her. It was about an ancient, abandoned house deep within the forest, known as the Fairless Manor. Ah, Fairless Manor. Its very name sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. Legend said that the house was not just haunted but also cursed. Even the bravest hunters and woodcutters never dared venture near it. Why is it cursed? Morgan would often ask the eldest villager, Old Maggie, whose wrinkled eyes had seen much beyond what anyone could imagine. Because some places are born bad. And Fairless Manor. Oh child, it's the worst of them. Maggie would reply, her voice trembling. Morgan, with her insatiable curiosity and disbelief in the supernatural, decided it was time someone documented the Fairless Manor. Armed with her notebook and a satchel of supplies, she ventured into the forest on a cold autumn morning. The journey was arduous. The trees grew denser as she walked further, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers, blocking the sun's light. Finally, after hours of relentless trekking, she stood before the dilapidated structure. Fairless Manor looked as though it had been frozen in time. The once grand mansion now was a crumbling heap of wood and stone. Yet, it held an eerie majesty, as if it were waiting for her. Stepping inside, the air grew colder as the door creaked ominously behind her, shutting her off from the outside world. The hallways were lined with dust-covered paintings of people who seemed to stare directly into her soul, their eyes following her every move. The silence was palpable, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing through the empty corridors. What a perfect setting for a ghost story, Morgan thought, smiling to herself. She took out her notebook and began documenting the structure. The grand staircase, the shattered chandelier, the decaying luxurious furniture. It all told a tale of a once opulent life now forgotten. She was so absorbed in her work that she scarcely noticed the descending darkness until it was too late. As night took over, the temperature plummeted. Her breath became visible in the frosty air, and an unsettling feeling began to creep into her bones. She decided to make her way out but found, to her horror, that the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in, but Morgan calmed herself, convincing her rational mind that old houses often had sticky doors. Walking back into the main hall, she felt a presence. A chill ran down her spine. Turning slowly, she saw faint outlines of figures standing silently at the end of the corridor. Her blood ran cold as she recognized them as the same people from the old paintings. The ethereal forms began to move towards her, their steps unnaturally smooth, floating rather than walking. She backed away in terror, clutching her notebook like a talisman. The figures whispered among themselves, their voices a garbled murmur that sounded like 1,000 overlapping whispers. Desperate, she ran up the grand staircase, past the staring portraits, and into one of the many rooms. Blam! She shut the door behind her, heart pounding like a war drum. Turning, she was met with an even grimmer sight. The room was decorated with antiquated children's toys, rocking horses, ragged dolls, and miniature furniture. Faded wallpaper of playful clowns and animals adorned the walls, but they seemed more menacing in the dark. In the far corner, a child's crib sat shrouded in shadow, gently rocking back and forth as though an invisible hand caressed it. A shiver ran down her spine once more. She approached slowly, drawn by an unseen force, and found a tattered teddy bear inside. Its single remaining eye stared at her with a malevolent gleam. A disembodied giggle broke the silence. Turning around, she saw a vision of a little girl in a white gown standing near the door. Her eyes were hollow black pits, and her smile, oh that smile, was the stuff of nightmares. She began to sing a chilling lullaby, each word sinking dread deeper into Morgan's heart. As the song crescendoed, the toys came to life, moving and writhing as if possessed. The little girl pointed at Morgan, and suddenly the walls began to close in. Morgan's breath quickened. She knew she was trapped. The curse of Fairless Manor was real, and it had claimed its latest victim. In a desperate attempt, she started chanting every protective spell and prayer she had ever come across in her studies. But the walls continued to tighten. Her vision blurred, giving way to darkness. Morning rays eventually penetrated the forest, shining on the manor's decrepit facade. The villagers noticed that Morgan didn't return and sent a search party. They found her notebook outside the house, filled with meticulous notes, but of her there was no sign. Fairless Manor had swallowed her whole. To this day, the village warns outsiders of the dangers that lurk in the forest. As for Fairless Manor, it stands still and silent, waiting for the next curious soul to venture into its cursed grasp. Some places are born bad, and Fairless Manor, oh child, it's the worst of them. At the foot of the stairs. She blinked, trying to process how it had moved. A prank, she thought, though she lived alone. Her trembling hands picked up the doll and placed it back on the mantelpiece. Returning to bed, sleep did not come easy as her mind swirled with unease. The next day, she shared the strange occurrence with Mrs. Craythorne, her elderly neighbor. "Oh, my dear, you've found Evelina's doll. Such a sad story." Mrs. Craythorne's voice quivered with age and forgotten sorrow. Lorraine's curiosity piqued. "Evelina?" "Yes, poor Evelina Grimsby. She lived in your home over a century ago.